Hello, Vincent Carroll speaking. Tutorial number 48, acupuncture versus dry needling. Let me be very clear about one point from the very beginning. Acupuncture is not dry needling and dry needling is not acupuncture. They're completely and totally different. But sometimes in the public mind, by putting a needle into somebody, particularly if there's pain in a particular area, such as a joint, sometimes can be considered as acupuncture when it is not. Acupuncture is about an entire system of medicine. It starts by making observation, how the person walks when they're coming into your clinic, how the person greets you, what their countenance is like, followed then by a detailed case history, no matter what's wrong with the person, even if from their point of view they have a frozen shoulder and nothing else. A detailed case history is something that is very important to take, because there can be many reasons why that person has the frozen shoulder and not, for example, the person standing beside them in the bus queue. There is something unique that might have made a frozen shoulder more likely to occur in the person coming into your clinic. So therefore, when a person comes to see you, even for something that appears relatively simple, the diagnosis begins at the very beginning, when you see that person for the very first time. Secondly, you may want to look at the person's tongue. For example, has the person a frozen shoulder simply because the muscles in the shoulder are failing below their design limits because they lack lubrication? And the lubricant from an acupuncture point of view, using acupuncture English, is liver blood. And if liver invades the liver blood will be deficient and muscles will fail below their design limits. So you might ask a whole range of other questions, and this is even before you think of going near a needle. It is a sophisticated, it is an important thing to go through in order to accumulate as much information from multiple inputs and put them all into the medical mix before you make up your mind. And that is where training comes in, and of course you need experience as well. The thought of somebody doing a weekend course or a short course and learning how to put needles into a person horrifies me, and the risks involved are very large indeed. Proper training is the basis of any discipline in life, and acupuncture is no exception to that rule. When you do decide to needle, you need to know how to needle locally and how to needle distally. And therefore you have to know about the meridians. You have to know about the organs associated with the meridians. You have to know about the paired meridians. So for example, if you needle in at gallbladder number 21, high point of the shoulder, because the person has a frozen shoulder, you might consider needling liver 2. Or you may consider needling gallbladder 43 to drag down because you're aware of a meridian going through that area. You may apply moxa. You may apply cupping over the area. You may apply electroacupuncture. There's a whole range of things that you might do. You might give a massage, tween a massage. You might prescribe a herbal remedy. All of these are part of the broader system of acupuncture-based medicine. Dry needling is not. And there are risks associated with dry needling. I want to be very clear about this. There have been a number of cases where people have got pneumothoraxes. That is to say, they have been needled into, very often they think it's the trapezius muscle. And in fact, it goes through to the lung. Because one point that we're all very much aware of, large intestine 16, the lung comes very close to there, whereas the lung is somewhat further away when you needle gallbladder 21. But anybody needling gallbladder 21 is going to lift up the trapezius muscle and is going to needle to a depth that they know is safe. And that comes both with knowledge and with experience. Anybody putting a needle in without either knowledge or experience is acting in a reckless way, and that must be argued against at all times. Other points also can be enormously dangerous, say back shoe points. And again, there have been cases of this that have been highlighted through the media not too long ago, where a person was needled, where a back shoe point, what we would call a back shoe point, 1.5 swing lateral in the thoracic area was needled. But again, it went through to the lung and the person got a pneumothorax. So it's something we need to be very, very careful about. We should discourage dry needling. Dry needling should have no place in therapy, whereas of course acupuncture should. And I'm not saying that simply because I run an acupuncture college. I mean, I'm saying that simply because common sense tells us that if you're going to put needles into people, at least at a minimum, you need to know the anatomy from a safety point of view, and you cannot learn that on a short course. And secondly, if you are going to achieve any success from putting a needle in, you need to know a sophisticated theory that underpins what you're doing and why you're doing it. So that again is something that can only comes with learning from any college that's reputable in any jurisdiction, but learning must happen and experience must be there as well. Nobody should leave an acupuncture college, no matter what college it is, without having needled, without having put in hundreds of needles into real people. Because the place not to learn is on the job. The place to learn is under supervision in a controlled environment. And then when you feel you have your knowledge and when you've passed rigorous examination, then in that case you go out into the real world in a seamless transition between being a practitioner, being a student and being a practitioner. And it's not a matter of just how one does in a final exam. It must be a matter of your hundreds of needles being inserted under supervision, the way you know you're safe when you go out. There's also areas associated with infection, risks associated with infection. There are risks associated with hitting nerves. There's risks associated with so many things if one just puts in a needle because one thinks one is an acupuncturist. And I'm not being in any way protectionist here. I'm just speaking with the best interests of the patient at heart. So I want to be very, very clear. Acupuncture is based on techniques and theories that are sophisticated and go back to the mists of time, but also are contemporaneous and current. And what you do in putting a needle in must be backed up by previous experience, must be backed up by a knowledge of theory, and must be backed up by training that goes into what you're doing, every aspect of what you're doing, including giving you the powers of observation when the patient comes in, the ability to take case histories, the ability to interpret what the needle tells you when the needle goes in. Do you or do you not apply moxa? What happens if the needle blushes up all red around it? I certainly wouldn't apply moxa then. What happens if the needle goes in and is gripped solidly? Of course I would apply moxa, because there's a stagnation on the channel. These are things that you need to interpret, and interpretation only comes with experience and proper learning. Weekend and short courses in dry needling, believe you me, that's a recipe for disaster, and that is something that is downright dangerous and must be guarded against. I hope I've made my point very, very clear. Thank you.